Okay, so you go to work every day, you put in your 8 to 12 hours, you're working hard, but are you doing really meaningful work? As knowledge workers, we should be creating, innovating, challenging best practices, challenging the status quo, defining new best practices. But are we really doing that? Or has the knowledge worker today become the modern line worker? Have you asked yourself that question? And here's why you should. The Economist Intelligence Unit conducted a study this year in which they surveyed 478 high-level marketing executives from around the world. They also conducted interviews with high-level CMOs. And the consensus was clear. 80% of CMOs say that they need to restructure the marketing function to better support their business. So as marketers, what that means is that you can either ride the wave or be crushed by the wave. So what's changed? Well, in short, everything. The first element is actually a really positive one, in that for the first time, marketing is being seen as a revenue driver on the P&L statement versus a cost. But what that means is that marketers increasingly have a lot more responsibility. We're responsible for the entire customer experience, right from initial awareness through to loyalty, through to advocacy. We're responsible for customer engagement. What does customer engagement mean? It means that customers are repeat purchasing our product, they are involved with the product, and they're loyal to what we're offering them. And increasingly, we need to be offering our marketing message via multiple channels. In the past, the buzzword was multi-channel. Now that buzzword is omni-channel. And all of that means that as marketers, we need to grasp new technologies, we need to understand data, we need to understand marketing operations, and we need to, within all of those tactics, be able to understand and grasp the bigger picture. But we're overwhelmed. In our day-to-day, we're really running that hamster race, and we don't have time to develop these new skills, especially when every single day looks like this. On average, we experience 1 interruption every 8 minutes, which equates to 7 interruptions an hour. If you do the math, that takes you to 50 to 60 interruptions every day. Assume that the average interruption takes 5 minutes, and then you're looking at wasting roughly 50% of your average workday. Furthermore, assume that 80% of those interruptions offer little or no value. You're looking at 3 hours of wasted time in a day. So we know that the expectations of us as marketers are growing. We know that there is a widening skills gap. So what are we going to do about that? Well, we need a formula for success. So that's what I'm going to be speaking to you about today. We're going to dissect our workday, and we're going to focus on the tactics that can make us more effective in the granular day-to-day grind of what we do. So this is where we're going to start. We're going to start with habits. So conventional wisdom has it that it takes 21 days to develop a new habit. Now, what is a habit? The definition really of a habit is that it is a decision that was once conscious that has now become unconscious. And that is our goal, is that we want to be making tiny, specific changes in our daily work habits so that we can become more effective, so that we can have more time to think and to create and to innovate. And by applying these tiny specific habits every day and staying committed to that process, that is where you're going to develop your individual competitive advantage for your business. So let's talk about how we're going to do that. We're going to define a process for these steps that we're going to take to become more effective. And this is what it looks like. So over 21 days, we are going to integrate 21 new tactics that we want to develop into habits. Now, I come from agency, I work in the PPC environment, so you'll see that many of the examples I talk about are going to be related to PPC, but you're going to be able to apply them to your marketing function. So on day one, we're going to introduce tactic number one that we want to become habit number one. On day two, we're going to integrate a second tactic. And then on day two, we're going to be focusing on implementing both tactic number one and tactic number two. On day three, we're going to introduce the third tactic, and so forth. So by 21 days, you will have introduced 21 new tactics that are going to make you more effective in your day-to-day. And the goal is that by day 21, the first tactic will then become habit number one. By day 22, the second tactic will become habit number two. Our goal here is that we're trying to make these effectiveness measures, we're trying to make them unconscious. So in the same way that you wake up in the morning and you brush your teeth and you get ready for work and you don't think about that, that's what we want to do with these effectiveness tactics, so that you are naturally integrating better practices into your day. So we've talked about how we're going to do it. Now let's focus on what we're going to be focusing on. So our goal is to try to create flow in the different components that make up work. So what do you need to do work? First, you need time. You need the capacity to be able to do work. Then you need context. You need to know what to work on in order to start to work. Once you know what to work on, and you actually sit down to start working, you need focus, and you need a clear mindset in order to achieve that work. And finally, most of us here don't work, well, I say we don't work in silos. Most of us probably do work in silos, but most of us work in teams, and so we need to communicate. And so that's that final loop, that communication loop in work. So then once the communication loop in work happens, then you move back to time. So these are the specific elements that we're going to be focusing on in terms of what tactics to apply to make us more effective in our day. Okay, so what is the biggest time waster in our workdays? Well, 49% of people agree, meetings. I think for me, this doodle is more valuable than what I get out of most meetings I attend. So the first thing that we're going to do is that we're going to focus on taking back control of your workday. And the way that we're going to do that is that you're going to review your calendar and you're going to ask yourself, how much time do I have to do real work? And when I say real work, I'm talking about meaningful work. I'm not talking about going to meetings, and I'm not talking about answering emails. Most of us, we're not hired to do that. That is a secondary element of what we do. I'm talking about your unique skill set. I'm talking about that work that you should be doing because you are best suited to do it, because you can offer the most value to your organization or your team by focusing on that work. So your first tactic that you're going to implement is you're going to stop mindlessly accepting meetings. So what does that mean? It means that if you receive a meeting invite where there's no clear agenda, where you don't know what the expectations are of you in that meeting, where you don't know why that meeting even exists, you're going to decline that meeting. If you have a meeting suddenly pop up in your calendar, same day invite, it's Thursday morning, you're working, meeting pops up for 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're going to reschedule. Because sometimes I find that people seem to think that we're sitting at our computers waiting for a meeting to pop up in our calendars and we have nothing better to do in the day. That's not the case. Meetings can be rescheduled. And the third thing that you're going to do is that when you find meetings that might be stacked in such a way where you have 30-minute gaps or 15-minute gaps between those meetings, you're going to try to reschedule them. It's not always going to be possible, but those 30 minutes are lost time. That time is gone. There is no way you're going to be productive in 30 minutes between one meeting and the next. So the best thing to do in that situation is to try to reschedule them so they can be back-to-back. So now you've cleared up your calendar, and this tactic you're going to implement every week. Once you've done that, what you're going to do with that time that you've now restructured is you're going to create 2 to 4 hour blocks of uninterrupted work time in your day. And you're going to schedule that in and create a meeting invite for yourself so that your team can also see that you're busy in that time. So effectively what we've done now with these first 2 tactics is that we have created the time to work. Now the next element is to know what to work on. In order to know what to work on, we need to plan. So our third element is to practice systematic time planning by using lists. And we're going to create different lists for different purposes. So first, you're going to create your master list. Your master list is a brain dump of everything that you could potentially be working on, every ad hoc request, every report that you need to build, every campaign, every project. It's a master task list. Then, at the end of every month, you're going to create a monthly list. This monthly list comes from your master task list, which drives everything, but the monthly list is a little bit more strategic. You're thinking about what are the high-level elements that I want to be focusing on this month. Then either at the end of the week on a Friday or at the start of the week on a Sunday night, you're going to create your weekly list. Now your weekly list is going to be a lot more tactical. This is what is going to define your priorities for the next week. And the goal here is that you are proactively planning your work rather than reactively reacting to work in your day-to-day environment and waiting for emails to come into your inbox to tell you what to work on. And then you're going to create a daily list at the end of every day. And this is really important. It's really important that you do this at the end of the day rather than at the start of the new day, because what you're actually doing is that you're allowing your subconscious to think about those tasks while you're sleeping. And then the next day when you wake up and you go into the office and you start to work, you already know what your priorities are. You're not reacting to the environment around you to tell you what to work on. You know what you should be working on. So now that you know what to work on, we need to figure out how to make you effective when you're actually working on that stuff. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to switch off all the distractions. Now I know this is going to be hard, and it's going to, you will mess up. You will mess up, and that's okay. Just keep trying. You're trying to develop a new habit. So the goal is just to persevere with every one of these tactics. Start with 2 hours. Just switch off all the pings and pop-ups and notifications that you get, and start with 2 hours. Now, I know this one's going to be a challenge for many of you, but just don't do it. Don't check email. Try it. For 2 hours, don't check email, and you'll be surprised at how much you can achieve when you're focusing on a single task. I don't know, I'm sure many of you have read about this, but they say it takes 20 minutes to get back to the level of focus that you had after a distraction. So if you allow yourself to check email in your uninterrupted work time, you're effectively losing 20 minutes of productivity. Next, time yourself. There's a lot of tools out there that allow you to time how long the work takes. This will help you to understand how long things actually take, and it will help you to more effectively plan your work, more effectively forecast tasks for the future, and it will also give you a good idea of how you're spending your days. So now this next element focuses on organizing your information. As knowledge workers, that is really one of our key competitive advantages, personally or within our organizations, is the information that we carry. The average executive loses approximately 6 weeks, they say, searching for missing information. So what you want to be doing is you want to be integrating specific tactics that help you to organize all of the information that you have around you, starting with clear naming conventions. Now, I'm using a PPC example here, but this is relevant to every random tools that you're using, whether it's Salesforce, whether it's PPC, whether it's Google Analytics. There's places within those tools where you need to be creating some type of campaign or some type of structure, and you want to have a linear naming convention that everyone else is aware of as well, and everybody else on the team is using, so that it's easier to navigate that tool. The next thing that you want to do is, wherever possible, you want to indicate actions and labels and naming schemes within the actual user interface. And here again is a PPC example to show you what I mean by that. This is an example of a negative keyword list within the UI. And what you'll see is that within the label for each of the lists, there are instructions for which campaigns to apply this list to. So when you're giving somebody a task and you're saying, hey, can you update the negative keyword lists, then whoever's working on that, may have never worked on it before. If they see these types of instructions built into the UI, suddenly you can delegate a task rather than holding someone's hand through it, because they don't know which lists are applicable to which campaigns. So now when it comes to organizing your information, email, I think, is one of the most overlooked information repositories that we work with every day. And it's actually becoming one of my pet peeves in terms of how much information stays in email. I've started to say recently, information goes to die in an inbox because we don't action that information. So that's what I mean by email is not a storage container, it's a shipping container. What you want to be doing is you want to be extracting critical information from your inbox. And there's different types of information that you receive in your inbox. So if you receive a file from a client that needs to be saved, you make sure that that is saved in your document management platform. If you receive a request for a task, you put that into your master task list. And then if you receive important information about a campaign or a project or a specific client, you put that into your master knowledge base. And so this way, we get hundreds of emails a day, and this way, if you're the only person on the team receiving a specific email and there's really important information in there, you can make sure that the entire team has access to that information. And that makes it possible to delegate and to share information more quickly, and you waste less of your time having to repeat yourself or to verbally share information because not everybody has that context. Next element in terms of organizing information is to label file names clearly. And I mean within your document management platform, you want to have a hierarchy, and you want to make sure that everybody on the team can navigate the folder structure that has been created without without being told how to do it. They should be able to see it intuitively. There should be context in terms of how your files are named. One of my favorite examples of how a Word document was once named, it was filed as document. Now, that's not useful to anybody. So you want to make sure that the context is there, that it's dated, there's a clear purpose, the purpose is stated in the file name. So this one is I know I'm asking a lot of you with this one, and I'm using a PPC example here. I say master client knowledge base, it can be a knowledge base for anything. But what you want to be doing is something like this where, so we work with many clients. We work with clients that are with us on average for a 12-month contract and can be with us for 5 years. So we have different team members working on these projects as well. And what we develop, and you can use any structure that works for you. Excel works really well for this, where, imagine this is an AdWords, this is a knowledge base for an AdWords client. And every single tab serves a specific purpose. So in one tab, we'll have a visual representation of an account structure so that we can explain to someone within 30 seconds how the account is structured, rather than someone having to navigate into the UI and try to figure it out themselves. We have the different geographic markets that we're targeting in there. You might have budget tab in there. You will have campaign settings in there. What are the standard best practice campaign settings that you're implementing for this client? And so forth. And so the idea here is that when you do have new team members coming on board, that they are able to access this information and very quickly ramp up on the project. So again, we work in teams, and we need to understand contextually what everybody is working on. So one of the things that we do there in terms of knowing, for example, in a paid search campaign, if there are 3 people working on that project, you want to make sure that everybody understands what everybody else is doing within the UI. And we do that by setting up a change sheet in Google Docs. Now, for those of you familiar with paid search, this is not a replica of your change history. These are high-level points that you're putting into the document in terms of the actions that you've taken. And what's really great about this is that when you're doing monthly or quarterly reporting and you see a dip or a rise, in your trend, in your data, it's so quick to reference this type of document and to see how an action might be tied to a change in the data. And then that helps you to tell the story behind the data. So now we're going to talk about communication. So it's that final element of work. There's that feedback loop. And it's about communicating about the right things in the right places. We tend to use email for everything. And then we tend to check email all the time in a day as well. So if you are going to write an email, try to write a subject line that helps the receiver understand the priority of the email. So here is an example. When you're writing emails, put in the client name at the start or the project name. Give some context about what this is about, and then put in the purpose of the email. Trust me, when you write subject lines like that, you will get faster responses, especially for those types of people who are receiving hundreds of emails in a day. You're helping them prioritize. And I know from experience this works. If you start doing this, there are people out there who will like this, and they'll start returning the favor. And you'll start to receive emails with awesome subject lines. So the next element is to compartmentalize your communication. So what I mean by that is that you don't always need to send an email. How often do you get emails with 3 words in it or 1 word in it? Thanks. What you want to do is that you want to move your communication to the relevant platform. So if you're using project management tool and you've allocated a task to someone and you want to add some context or additional subtasks to that task, don't send an email. Put all task-related information into the project management tool. If you're working on a task and you need some context or some information, or you want a status update on the task, use a group chat tool. HipChat is great for that, where you've got specific rooms allocated to specific projects, and you can have a conversation in that room about a specific project. And then finally, ask yourself, do I really need to send that email? Is it really necessary? Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you can pick up the phone. Sometimes you can just Skype someone. So try to, A, reduce the number of emails that you send, and B, communicate about the right things in the right places. A third thing, in terms of becoming more effective with communication, this ties to agendas. We have a great practice where we will write our client agendas within a Google Doc, and the client has access to that Google Doc, and the whole team can collaborate on the agenda, and then the meeting notes are also written in that same Google Doc. So eventually, over time, you have this awesome repository of agendas in the right place with their accompanying meeting notes, and it really helps to, again, tell the story about the client progression or the history. When I joined ROI, one of the first things I did was to read through the Google Docs of agendas for the clients that I was working on to better understand the history and the context and where we're at with those clients. So now I'm just going to give you a few more quick tips, actionable tips in terms of things that you can be doing. So your next tactic, if you don't already do this, bookmark. Bookmark all your frequently used programs in Chrome, in Firefox. A quick tip that I learned, and it's really cool, just small things that you can do to make yourself more effective, is that if there are specific programs that you use and that have typical branding so that you can see what that program is just with a little image, you can get rid of the text and you can just bookmark those little images, so then you have more space within your toolbar to bookmark more things. Use Pocket. I recently discovered Pocket. If you are like me and you're the culprit of having 25, 30 tabs open in multiple windows because you want to get back to all of those things that you need to read and then your computer crashes and then you lose it all, Pocket is a great solution for you. It's a fantastic tool. You can very quickly, within the click of a button, bookmark, well, I say bookmark, but you're pocketing. So you can put into Pocket all of the things that you want to read later. And it integrates really well between devices as well. Use a password management tool. If you don't already, there are a ton of options out there on the market. Most of them, at a certain level are free, and then you can always upgrade to the premium version. But we use so many different tools and platforms today, and we've got so many passwords to keep track of. If you want to save 5 minutes a day, if not more, use a password management tool. Standardize. So again, this goes back to that element of we're knowledge workers. We should be creating. We should be thinking of new things. We shouldn't be stuck in repeatable tasks. So if you are working on a repeatable task, every time you work on it, add an instruction to it. You don't need to write the full instructions next time that you do it, but if you diligently add new instructions every time you're doing that repeatable task, eventually you can delegate that and give it to somebody else so that you can focus on the work that you should be working on. Use a project brief. Again, so these things that I'm asking of you, I'm not really asking you to do anything more, I'm just asking you things to do a little bit differently. So think about the last time that you were starting to work with a new vendor, or exploring that relationship, or launching a new campaign. Say, for example, you're launching a rocket fuel campaign. And so you, as the key stakeholder at your company, are interfacing with the key stakeholder at rocket fuel. And you're going back and forth, and you're exchanging information, and then your email stream becomes 20 emails, and then you decide, okay, cool, we're ready for launch, we have all of the details. Only you two have all of that information, and it's in your email. So what do? You forward that email string to the other relevant people that need to know about it, and they need to go through those 20 emails to get that relevant information. Where all you really needed to do was to put it into a simple document. It does not have to be complex. Just put key pieces of information that you extract from the emails into that document. And if you want to be really smart about it, you should be doing that with the first email that starts rather than the 20th, so that you don't have to read all 20 emails again in order to summarize that information. So now we've talked about, these are 20 actionable tips, and remember, we're integrating a new one every single day. We're not necessarily actioning them every single day, but we're bringing them into our consciousness. So the final tip is, once you've been doing this for almost 3 weeks, set aside 30 minutes in your day to update your skills. That's really what we're focusing on here is, 1, to be more effective in how we work, and 2, to increase our skill set, because we need to do that. If we don't do that, we're going to fall behind. Why are we going to fall behind? Because to work, we don't just need time. Before you need time to work, you need the knowledge to work. You can have all the time in the world, but if you don't have the knowledge, you become redundant. And that is our goal. As marketers, given the wave is so big and always following us, we need to be updating our skills. So today is day 0. Tomorrow is day 1. What tiny, specific habits are you going to integrate into your day? Thank you.
Awesome tips. Where I was sitting over there, was a lot of heads nodding, no meetings. So a couple questions we got on Twitter.
Yeah.
One was how do I encourage my team to do this with the no meetings? That seems to be a sticking point. The other was how do I sell the C-level on no meetings? How do I convince my manager, my supervisor, everybody else? How do I spread this throughout my company?
So when it comes to meetings, I think the way to do that is to start ask your C-suite those difficult questions. When there's whether your colleague is sending you a meeting invite or whether it's the CMO, ask them. You don't have to be aggressive about it in any way. All you say is, what is the agenda for this meeting? What is the purpose of this meeting? What role would you like me to play in this meeting? How do I prepare for this meeting? And if they can't, then you're helping them to think about it, and they might come to the conclusion themselves that this meeting isn't necessary. But really it starts with you. Before you can teach anyone else to do any of these things, you need to lead by example. And you'll see that some people will organically start to respond to you and start to implement the same things. And others you're going to have to convince a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. We have a rule at Moz that you're supposed to have an agenda for every meeting, and if you don't, the meeting doesn't take place.
Yep, I agree with that completely.
Okay, we got a Rand Fishkin asking, I like to use my email as my task list. I email myself task, and at inbox 0, I have no work left. Is this a good idea?
Rand, I don't know how you have no work left. I think you're fooling yourself. I mean, in terms of where you keep track of your tasks, that what tools you use, that is going to be a personal decision. Having said that, I believe in having a master task list in a place where you can clearly see all of the tasks, because then that helps you to better prioritize. If you're emailing yourself tasks in individual emails, you might very quickly lose track of the big picture.
Okay, last question. This is the rapid fire round because a lot of people are asking about your favorite platforms and tools for each task. So I'll say a problem and you say what your favorite platform is.
Okay.
Knowledge base.
Excel.
Communication.
HipChat.
Project management.
Asana and MonkeyWorks.
All right. Marta Turek, thank you very much for these tips.
Thank you.